Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Productivity Mastery Podcast. I'm very happy to be here today with a very close person of mine, a good friend, I would say a trailblazer when it comes to building the startup ecosystem of Europe, of New Europe. And last but not least, definitely, he's the co-author of Perform the Unsexy Truth About Startup Success, this book right here, which I'm humbled and honored to be a co-author as well. So there you go. There you go. And before we dig into the insights, the seven pillars of performance, Cristobal, I would like you to introduce yourself, to share more about your background, your story, to tell us about Startup Wise Guys, the mission, the vision, and then we'll get into the seven pillars of performance.
Wow, and I just told you that let's do 4 minutes. Man, if I get already into that answer, it could be 10 minutes. But thank you, Stoyan. Glad to be here. Glad that we can take at least once a month time to see each other on video, even if it's on a podcast. It seems difficult to find time, even if we are continuously communicating about the book. So Cristobal Alonso, I'm the CEO of Startup Wise Guys. I will say a former professional basketball player, wine lover, cook, father, and a lover of life. So I love what I do. Yes, I think you define it well. I don't know if it's a trailblazer, but somebody who's been passionate about being a serial entrepreneur, but also in every step building a legacy, building communities that last. One of our four values, two of the four values in Wise Guys is long-term views, but also that we're community builders. So that we take that at heart. And yes, happy. It's been, as you know, very tough year for humanity, almost 1.5 years now. So I was talking today to a couple of my partners about how tired everybody feels, no matter what. And even now we start at least getting the summer, the vaccines, seeing some of the loved ones that we have not seen for a while. I think we still have managed to be the most active investor in Europe for the past 2 years. We've done more than 110 investments in the past 2 years, raised quite a bit of money, helping our startups, our founders, everything. Even if we have all moved online, so we are startups online wise guys. It seems but adapted. Strive more than 40 employees, present in 5 cities, opening 2 more that will be announced in the coming days. Even if everything is online, we're still opening new programs in new places. Very excited to the journey ahead. We're now talking about 2023, 2024 strategy in our quarterly meeting in 3-4 weeks from now. So yeah, we have a lot to do still, both to build, but also happy to carry the flag of the unsexiness truth, or the hard truth, right? Like I keep posting when people say, "Oh, another unicorn, another unicorn." I always very happy for the founders because I know what it means to them to feel success in that sense, but not to forget that 10 companies of 100 million build much more for our ecosystem, maybe a step in PR, that one company of 1 billion, right? When we look at taxes, when we look at impact on founders, impact on job creation, and we need to strive to build more solid foundations and not to paint glossy pictures about unicorns, the mythical creatures that don't exist.
So for the people who keep on seeing these passionate people with red shirts and all these wise guys, people ask me, what is this wise guys? For people who do not know about it, what does an acceleration program look like?
I don't know. It looks like hell or heaven, depending if you talk to people at the beginning or at the end of the program, right? I think it's one of the most overused names, but at the same time, probably the best definition. Accelerators accelerate. What do we accelerate? We take companies, depending of the accelerator, but in our case, almost on post-revenue product is out there. We help them accelerate, I will say it in 4 dimensions. we help building the company, or in a way what we say funding transformation. So basically becoming leaders of the company. As I said, we help founders become entrepreneurs. Everybody can start a company and become founder. Can they really become an entrepreneur? Can they really have long-lasting impact in a venture, right? Secondly, we help them on sales, mostly not on even creating more sales, but the scaling. So can you create a method that scales, right? That is repeatable. So because the first sales are always contacts, close contacts, experience. But can you create a method that as you go international, for example, because we mostly work with SaaS companies, it scales. The third one is pitching. Can you pitch? And pitch, people think about pitching to investors, but as founders, we're continuously preaching the gospel, right? Our vision, our culture. So to employees, to partners, to stakeholders, to investors, to future investors. So we continuously need to be good at communication. So I think we take pitching, and then that's at the end become public speaking. And the fourth one is helping them accelerate the opportunity to access to funding, both us investing as a company, as a fund, but also accessing other investors in the follow-up rounds, which in most cases, and we always emphasize, funding is not the objective, but in many cases it's necessary to hypergrowth or to grow faster. And in this case, you need to do it, and you need to do it properly, right? So I think that's what accelerators should do. So we invest, and then we help them accelerate in several dimensions. But our job, at least ours in Wise Guys, doesn't stop there. The journey continues. We have probably the most engaged alumni community in Europe, and we keep supporting them both personally, which is when most needed, especially those who are not that successful. And sometimes they call you on a Sunday saying everything is falling apart, what can I do? And we are there to say, hey, most we care about you as an individual. Startups can be repeatable, but people cannot be repeatable. But also when they need more funding, when they need advice legally, when they have issues with co-founders, when they need to hire new talent, and at the end we are there for them, right? And then with the journey continues until they sell, the exit, or they decide that it doesn't go any further and they have to call it quits. And when they have tried their best, sometimes they need to call it quits and try something else and not lose the passion on something that might not work at the end of the day, right?
And for the audience who do not know, I've been part of the Wise Guys, so to say, extended family since 2016, when Cristobal and I shared by a glass of beer in Aarhus in a startup event. And back in 2019, and we've been working closely on lots of projects. You guys have been bringing me in as a performance, a productivity coach, helping the startups to, on the one side, to build the dynamics of the team, but on the other side also in terms of personal leadership and so on. So we've been working closely. And back in 2019, you called me in Copenhagen to go and have a cup of coffee. And then you were like, hey, dude, we should write a book together. maybe you can share with the audience a little bit about this. Why did you see the importance to actually cover topics around culture and performance, right? Like most startup books at the time were focused on MVP and sales and those kind of things, more technical things. Why did you see this importance of actually promoting this more, as they're called, most softer part of the journey?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you have the same saying in Bulgaria or something similar. In Spanish, we say that, in life you need to do three things. You need to have a child, write a book, and plant a tree, right? So I don't know what is this inner need, existential need of humans to write books, right? So you asked me, why did we write a book? I said, I don't know. Somehow I think I need to write a book, right? I think the different question is, why did we write it about this, right? So I think both had that existential need, I think, of writing a book. I think you were thinking about writing your own book. I was thinking about writing my own book. I think when we met that day, I think we connected that probably. I think we apply one of our lessons in Roles and Responsibilities about it's much easier to do with a co-founder, especially if it's the first time. So this was our first startup from a book point of view. And I think being together, challenging each other has been very useful. I don't know if we have gotten, for sure, we will not have gotten to the same quality, but I don't know if we have even gotten to the end line, because it was so many times that you're like, but it's the other that pulls or brings the energy at that point, right? I think initially you were focused about productivity. I was very much focused on culture. But I think when we start working, so there is many other things that if are not there, there seems that we're lacking something. And that how many people, there was very little about the inner side of the company, right? About how to build a company from the inside. How there was all these things that people might call soft or not that sexy that needed to be built, right? And I think that's how I think putting together the framework made a lot of sense. How can we give founders a possibility to tick boxes on very specific things that by being internal, they are way more in control, that customer reaction, that funding, that other things. But if you put them in control, if you actually go through them, if you actually drive them and define them yourself, your chance to succeed are much, much higher, right? I think that's how we thought about it. And of course, I still think that I think probably the second main driver was not on the topic, but thinking that there is a lot of books with Mark Zuckerberg and company, or Jeff Bezos, right? There is even decent amount of books, and maybe about some wonder kings in Germany. Probably there are not that many even, but maybe in the UK. But there was almost no books about what founders around us, right? Founders in the new, what we call the new Europe. We know the numbers are there. There are more than 70 unicorns right now in the region. There are hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs around us that are doing an amazing job. We always believe that when you see your neighbor doing something great, you think you can do it. When you see Mark Zuckerberg in Palo Alto, it's too far away, right? So we thought that by bringing kind of real cases of people around us in our own regions with our same backgrounds, and so these people can do it, you can do it, it will actually resonate much more, right? So we want to be something about the unsexy, about the inside of the company, with very practical, real examples of people in the region that will inspire aspiring founders, or even project managers to do things differently and have a much bigger chance to succeed, right?
Yeah, and I think just to add on top of this is many of the books in this area, they're a lot about the sort of like the higher mindset of you have to dream big, you have to do this, but they don't provide you with the actual practical tools. What do people actually do in order to excel in these specific areas that we defined in the perform framework? And maybe it'll be good for the audience also to hear what are these 7 areas from the perform framework, the perform acronym, and we can afterwards go one by one and share some of the insights, some of the practical examples, and so on. But Cristobal, could you share the 7 areas from the
I
perform
just want
framework?
to even open the book. Of course, I will know them by heart, but it looks more real when you are reading them, right? So even if you always tell people you cannot read when you present the right. Yeah, so I think is the P was the first P is purpose and values. So culture in a way. The second one is around the planning, so efficient planning, the E, efficient
That's
planning.
That's the one that you're actually always messing up. It's effective planning.
Yeah, so I call it efficient, and then instead of dude, it's effective. And then we have a philosophical discussion about effectiveness versus efficiency, and then I still say efficient planning. So clearly, I need to keep doing webinars for the next.
We need to rehearse more next time.
Then we have roles and responsibilities, which I think we had a lot of discussions. I think we changed the title of the R. I think it was the most unsexy out of the unsexy topics, and then it is really amazing. And we'll talk a bit later about how impacting it is. Focus and execution. I think probably a lot of people resonate that how difficult it is to be able to focus, especially when they are now in the Zoom era, how this has become even more relevant. How many monkeys are around trying to get your attention, right? Optimal energy, another one that has become even more relevant in the COVID times, about how much we need to take care. You can just show yourself, robust communication. The other page, you need to move the book. That's fine.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
Yeah, good. And mental toughness, right? So I think those are basically the seven of them. There is always a story about each letter, but I think we'll go through it right now. But maybe emphasizing about the seven letters and talking about COVID. I think this book was almost ready to go, content-wise, at least on direction, before COVID happened. And it was very interesting when we went through the draft and be ready. It was written mostly during COVID times at the end of the day, even if the idea was before, but how it became even more relevant, right? So how 2 or 3 chapters there, optimal energy, robust communication, mental, basically mental toughness, or the people talk about now, a lot of mental health, but mental toughness per se, has become even more relevant in current times. Right?
And to add the first topic that we actually will explore right now, purpose and values. How important is to actually have a very well defined culture, strong culture. And when you come to these very unprecedented times, how important was for many companies who did the work before these COVID times, and then appreciated that they did it. They actually put the effort, they put the time to define the culture, to invest in culture, to invest in people. And I want to start there because this was actually an area that you've been a big promoter of, and you're the one who actually wrote the chapter, of course, with a lot of feedback from me, with a number of edits, thanks to our lovely editor Jessica, who gave us a lot of tough love. But why is it important for a startup, even in early stage, to define the culture, to talk about purpose, to talk about the values? Why is that important?
Yeah, as you said, I think first you already made the point. There is not good or bad cultures. There is only a strong or weak cultures. And I think companies that faced this unprecedented crisis with a well-defined, strong culture has benefited a lot. That doesn't mean that we have not been challenged, because I consider that as wise guys, we have a strong culture. We've even been challenged how strong really is, how good are your values. When you're onboarding 20 people offline, how can you pass them that culture, right? So we've been tested a lot on it. But I think it's fundamental for different things. The first one is alignment, right? The why, the purpose is something that is why we started the journey. That comes very much from the founders. But in the culture, when we talk about the 3 pillars of the culture, the why, the what, and the how, the purpose, the vision, and the values, is that culture is going to emerge. You can control it, take control of that, and define what you want to be and what you want the team to be, or you can let it happen on its own, right? Which is what happens in many cases, right? And for whatever reason. So I think in order to be a strong culture, you need to take control of the definition. You need to embrace it and involve your entire team on the definition. And you need to know that although well-defined and strong, it needs to be revitalized every 12 to 18 months, because new people will come on board. The second part is, and you see it in the book, is I made this relationship between the brand and the culture. So the brand is the promise to customers. The culture is how we deliver that promise. So I don't think you can be really successful if you don't have the 2 legs working together and aligned. And doesn't mean that they start together. I don't know, many companies start on the brand and then they go culture, they start culture and the brand, but at some point they need to come together. And if they are not aligned, something will suffer, right? And I think that is a very strong. You talk about the third one, right? We actually use a word in English that was galvanizing the troops, and people didn't understand the word galvanizing. But the example was that at some point in your life, as a founder, you're going to tell people we need to fire people, or we need to stop paying people, and everybody realized what that means during COVID, right? Something cash became important. You had to have a town hall to give terrible news or tough times ahead. And if you have been delivering the culture, being transparent, being communicating, probably people stay with you in the tough times. But if that was the first time you really wanted to put that in place, people will leave, right? So I think it has served the purpose a lot of galvanizing the troops, of helping us going through tough times together. And that is super relevant at this point. Right?
And just to add on top of this, one thing that we found in statistics, as you like to say, I love to dig into research and studies and so on. But one of the things that's the biggest reasons for startups actually to fail is misalignment around co-founders. Founders who get really passionate about an idea, maybe they go to a hackathon, maybe they were long-term friends, and they just start a company without having these discussions. What do we stand for? What do we believe in? How do we want to run this thing? What is the level of commitment? One of the co-founders is super committed, working 65 hours. The other one is taking it easy, and they talk about it too late sometimes. So having this discussion is, and here is a quote by the somebody from New Europe, the founder of Miro, which actually has been accelerating quite well during the COVID-19 crisis. Andrei Kusit, he's originally Russian, and he contributed with an interview for the book. And what he wrote us is, day one is the right times to start deciding on values and crafting the culture you want your startup to have. In terms of practical terms, Cristobal, you've been working with hundreds and hundreds of startups. What does that mean? What does it mean in practical terms to start deciding on the values and crafting the culture from day one?
Yeah. Well, we run the Perform workshop with our startups in Wise Guys, right? And we actually try to do it on the week 1 or 2, because in fact we want this conversation to be almost the kickoff of everything happening, right? As you said, I think the conversation of why are we doing this should happen hopefully even before. I remember you and me having this conversation about the book, because it was our startup, right? Why are we doing this? What do you want out of this? So alignment, right? I think that the values is something that you start defining with your co-founder and employees on the day after. And again, I think you get in a habit to talk about these things. I think there is two important details that many people said. You don't need to be on day one having a big logo on your company with your values, your mission, your purpose, etc. But you need to be talking about it from day one. So the formalization might happen afterwards, but you're constantly creating this conversation in the company about this matters. Values matters. That we are true to our values matters. That we do things beyond monetary retribution. That we care about something deeper. And I think even if you don't, sometimes you might not be able to write it down all the same, but you see that everybody's more or less talking about the same thing, right? It's very important when you're hiring. You're not hiring on skills. You're hiring some value alignment. You can always coach the skills. You cannot coach values. Values are something inner to us. Either we are aligned or we are not, right? You might live with them, but you're aligned or you're not. We can coach the skills. So to me, it's very important. And maybe it's also like there's millions of startups. You're probably going to be able to differentiate yourself way more on your culture than on your product. So you're going to convince people to work for you because they want to work there, because it feels great to work in your company. Then it might pay better, but that will come later. But they really want to work with this team. And usually they might not be able to define why. That is because they like the culture, because they like to work in that environment, right? So it's a differentiation factor that might be your biggest differentiation factor to attract the top talent that you need to drive your company.
Yeah, and by the way, you are providing a great example. Those of you who are interested, you can go to performnow.eu/book. And until Friday, until tomorrow evening, if you add this code perform20 and at checkout, you'll get 20% off the book. Thank you for being with us and listening. And there's a great example where Cristobal is sharing the process of actually defining the values in the culture in Startup Wise Guys. And and I'm emphasizing on process because it's not a one-time workshop. It really has been taking time for them, and they're still in the process. But it's an excellent example that you can read in the first chapter of purpose and values. And I'm moving on to the second one, which is effective planning. Effective planning is the second
The
chapter.
efficient planning.
Yes. So this is a chapter actually I wrote, and as you know, this is one of the things I'm most passionate about. But knowing you and seeing you over the years and meeting at different airports and coffee shops in different countries, I can see that you're also an effective planner yourself, and you realize the importance of planning as such. And we start this chapter actually in the book with a quote: "All this planning is great, but I don't have time to plan my time. We're just so busy." And this is a typical excuse of an overwhelmed startup founder. Man, I would love to plan. It's great, but we're just so busy doing stuff. I don't have time to plan my time. This is a usual. Is that something that you will see often, especially with the early stage founders?
I think we obviously, again, we coach this, but and you've been actually yourself talking to a lot of people also in my own team, right? I think it's not a natural skill. So I would say a lot of the people involved in startups, at least, are creative people, right? Which you will not imagine creative, passion, energy with planning, right? I think it's a mistake not to imagine it together. But we need to be great planners. And I think one of the things you very always tell people is that you don't understand the change in your life of dedicating 30 minutes to planning every day until you start doing it. And then you realize, oh my God, this is so effective, right? So I think it's almost planning the plan to plan is the first, I think, biggest step. I think just doing that, I think it is a dramatic change in your life, right? And you can do it with applications, you can do it, with pen and paper, but just dedicating time to plan and doing it on a consistent manner changes a lot. The secondly, when you do it, your team does, because they will start seeing you doing it, right? So it also creates a role model. And you don't need to teach much to people. Please dedicate 30 minutes to plan. That's all it takes for coaching, and then seeing you doing it, right? So it's not a very complicated. It's you emphasizing to them that prioritizing time for planning is fundamental. And then to me, there is two other keys, or maybe three. And the one is the goals, which goes with them with two priorities, is to always understand what are we aiming at, right? Not a to-do list for today, but always say, what do we want to achieve in this quarter or in this month? Be able to say, if there is only one priority, what it is. So when we get in this time on stress, on these times of conflicting priorities, what is the one priority that everybody has at the company, at the department, at myself? This pyramid that we're trying to do, right? And in a way also then being able to go every week, said, I am very busy. I'm being very busy. Have I moved the needle? Am I closer to my objective that I set for the quarter or for the month? I think a lot of people just don't reflect in these things, right? They just said, I had a very busy week, now in Zoom, I had a lot of meetings, but did you achieve something, right? And I was sharing the other day this, I always do it every week, this, what did we achieve last week? What are my priorities for this week? What is in my head bothering me, right? And you need to be doing this constantly. And maybe the last one is the ability to say no, which again goes to prioritization, right? The startups don't do too many things well. They hopefully do one thing excellent. And the rest they will not be doing it because there is no time and resources, right? So our biggest ability to plan effectively is to say no as much as possible and to have an area of focus. And again, that's much easily said than done, right? Because there's all these amazing things you want to test, right? And all these potential, today we're talking about a startup, but I have an opportunity in Nigeria. Like, but didn't you just tell me that your target market is the Nordics? Yeah, but this opportunity is like, yeah, that opportunity is not long-term thinking, is bothering you. And even if you succeed, it means nothing because that's not your target market. So Thank you. No. Next. But do you always? So saying no, definitely no, is very difficult, right? But it's the best way to prioritize. Is no, 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 no. Yes, this is what we have to do. Right?
Yeah, I love what you say, that repeating it over and over again, actually, because it's not about the sexy stuff. Everybody's asking about what apps should I use? Tell me a planning method, and you'll find several planning methods used by some of the best startups out there. Great, use them. But the number one thing is actually having the habit to create this space on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. First of all, to get really clear what are the objectives for next day, for next week, for next month, and building it backwards, right? Like if this is our quarterly goal, what do I have to do today in order to be on track to
Mm-hmm.
achieve this? But also the communication with the team. And we'll go with communication, but sometimes we are very good in organizing our own time as founders, but does our team know what our priorities are? And do I know what their priorities are? Are we on the same page with this as well? So it's always about the founder, the leader of the company, and then how well is the team actually getting inspired to apply these things on a consistent basis. Um, and this leads me to the third area, which is R for roles and responsibilities. Perhaps the most unsexy of the unsexy areas, as you mentioned previously. Why is that the case? And why this actually turn out to be the one area that we usually tend to get the best feedback about when we do our workshops?
Yeah, I think again is the confusion between roles and responsibilities, right? So say, oh, it's very clear. We have a CMO, a CTO, and a CEO. I said, good. So what is the CMO main responsibilities? Well, marketing. And what is that? And okay, so let's talk about sales. I didn't hear chief sales officer. What about cleaning the carpet or taking the laundry out or registering the company? So again, so first, the roles don't matter. Naming of those don't matter really. It's good to have it don't matter. Secondly, responsibilities change so much quarter over quarter in an early stage startup, right? So I think and somehow, I don't know why, people just don't sit down to say what I'm responsible of, which I think goes a lot with the objectives. Because people just say, oh, we don't even prioritize objectives. Let's do a startup. We need to launch the product. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, but there is many other things that need to happen, right? So I think it's this assignment about this understanding of what is to build a startup, which to many people is building a product. It's not building a company. And then when you realize you have to build a company, then other things matter. But I think it's this definition of responsibilities, which also then helps with accountability and ownership. And it's just surprising the amount of things people has not defined who does them, right? And they just think they're going to be in a table discussing everybody everything, right? Which is very ineffective. I think the second thing that we talk a lot is the alignment of passions and responsibilities, right? Because again, in an early startup, you have to do what you have to do. I don't care you're the CEO, you are ironing the shirts before the podcast for the team if that's what you need to do today, right? I don't care you're CEO, right? You do it. So, but I'm not passionate about ironing, actually. I just don't have money maybe at that point to send it to dry cleaning, right? Which in this case means to hire somebody else, right? So at the beginning, we do what we have to do. But I think very early on, we have to define two things. These are the things that are good at, and these are the things that are not that good. So those ones I need to get them out as soon as possible. But also these are the things that I love doing. And you need to make sure that you're in a startup doing something that you love, you are doing yourself something that you love over time. And if you're doing a lot of things but you don't love any of them, you're not going to be very good at it. And either you have to find some other thing to do within the company or somewhere else, right? So it's this alignment of passion and responsibilities. And not everything that you do at the beginning you love, but you need to be very clear what it is that you're not good at and what you don't love. Hopefully they're the same. And then start getting rid of them as soon as possible to somebody who is good at it and is passionate about it, because then they will be much better at executing them, right? And then you're also then you're in the lookout constantly for that talent. Should we need as soon as possible a good accountant? Okay, so you're constantly looking in a networking session, in LinkedIn, a conversation. Oh, so we always have to be 6 months ahead, identifying the talent we need. And when we define very well what we don't like or we don't do well, we have very much in our mind clearly what it's going to be, right? And somehow this, which is so basic, is a tremendous revelation to people. And I think when they start defining what they have to do, then they start defining how do we measure success on those things that you need to do. Right? Might be time delivery, might be other type of fundamentals there, and it creates accountability in the company, which is the best way to deliver. When people is accountable to, we all own it, we all do it together, and we can talk about the race, etc. But you are accountable for something, and you need to deliver. Being the CEO or being whoever you are.
Yeah, I love what you emphasize on, and also actually in the chapter, I love that you go in depth. This was one of your chapters, and you go in depth into explaining the different roles as well, and when do you have to consider hiring different type of people, the dynamics of founders, the solo founder versus having 2 or 3 co-founders. A lot of good stuff in the chapter of roles and responsibilities, as well as 2 super practical tools, perhaps the highest rated tools from our workshops when it comes to defining the roles and responsibilities through passions and strengths. And I gotta say, Cristobal, sometimes I get, like, if I work with people and I assume that they love this thing because they never say anything, they're really good at it. Then we do this exercise and it's like, oh, this is red for you? I thought you love to do it. You're really good at it. No, I do
Mm-hmm.
it because there's nobody else to do it, but I hate it. Ooh, okay. All right, we need to do something. We need to talk about it. So super, super important area,
Oh,
roles
and
and
we might understand,
responsibilities.
and we might even understand the frustrations. Why some frustrations come from people, even when everything is happening, because sadly they are making it happen, but they don't like it, right? So it might actually point it out to areas in which the CEO or whoever is responsible of people is, hey, pay attention. No, we need to give them something that they like it more because they're doing something they don't like, and they're still doing it very passionate, very dedicated because they love this company. But hey, we need to put some passion into their job, right? And I think that's also very important there. Yeah, and just complementing that, maybe Stoyan on the. So we talk about several roles and when to incorporate them into the company, right? As the company grows, everybody we have the CEO, we have the sales or the designer, the brand guy, we have the doer, the hand, the CTO developing. And we're looking at what are the roles that as company grow, we need to incorporate. We try to give some rules and tips about, hey, when do you hire an HR person? It's the typical role that people just do as late as possible, and then they always say, man, I should have had this much before. And we give a rule about when you're hiring more than 3 people per quarter, you probably need a person. And it's not just for hiring, there are for many more things. But again, so we give tips on when to hire finance, when to hire a product person, and I think it's very useful for people to at least have present certain trips about, hey, pay attention to this role. We might be needing it right now. That sometimes it's not too late when you bring that talent into the company.
Yeah, and I'm moving on with the next one, which is focus and execution. You started already speaking a little bit about it, as it's very connected to effective planning. Right, on the one side, we go high up in the mountain. You're down in the jungle, as we like to say it, of entrepreneurship, hustling, 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 getting things done, making progress. Like you go up, high up, and you see the whole picture. You define what the priorities are. But there's many people who are actually good in planning and dreaming and setting objectives, but they're not really good in execution. So what do you think about that? Why should we be laser focused? And we're actually quoting Bruce Lee here, right? Talking about you should be. Let's just find this one. Let's just find a quote by Bruce Lee to begin this chapter with. It's the successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus? Bruce Lee.
I think we need to do the audio. I just have to see us reading these deep quotes with our deep accents and trying to get this solemn. I think the audiobook is going to be a hit, not because the content, but yes, it's going to be so much fun to listen to us talking.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. There could be a game.
Yeah.
How much did you understand on the book, right?
Yeah, that's always the trick. But I'm even way more difficult than you, I think, on that. Yeah, I think two things. I think this is one of the. I was yesterday talking with one of my managers, and they told me I just cannot in the Zoom space after more than an hour start focusing. I need to start doing Mandelas or something because I just space out, right? So I think we've been impacting more about focus than ever because focus means in front of a screen time and time and time with all these things around you that can distract you because most of the case you can just not focus anymore, right? But you give these 5 billions, 5 enemies of focus and execution, right? So you talk about the lack of priorities. We talked before about how important prioritization it is, and you give a number of tools. They also talk about the shiny object, right? It's always shinier there. And again, the sexy things, right? No, just focus on what you're doing. We need to do it, right? So they have always this shiny thing, right? Which is what we talk about. Your biggest productivity tool is to say no,
Still
right?
empty. Still empty
Yeah.
from
So,
Paul's 8-figure startup CRM platform, and that's what he said. What do you do to be productive? My biggest productivity tool is saying no.
yeah.
That's not sexy.
Practice. Just practice. One day and you will say, "Man, I got so many things down because I just keep saying no to lots of the things, so I get the things down." Right. The one is basically procrastination. The amount of people that tomorrow, right? You always talk about eating the frog first thing in the morning, right? So one trick is to just do that thing that you don't really want to do it first thing in the morning, so you feel okay, it's out of the way. Now I can focus on other things, right? But yeah, there is so many people that just keeps postponing the start with no other reason than just tomorrow, right? So I think it is something that we notice in a lot of people. Then is multitasking. We go back to no, right? Trying to do too many things at the same time instead of no. Focus on one thing, do it. Move to the next one, do it. So you take a lot of research that's proven that you cannot multitask, right? Or is never effective to multitask. And I think just do one thing at a time. This is again, it goes into what we said. Most of the things we say in the book, they're not any revelations, right? They're not something. It's just a lot of very normal habits that when you do them constantly over and over, they become powerful tools. But it's not something that you need a PhD to master. I think that's the beauty, I think, of it. It's just acquiring habits and trying many different apps and tricks until you find the one that becomes a habit for you, right? And we give examples about what you can do, right? So I think those things are actually there, and there is lots of areas here, and I think you're very good at structuring different methodologies, different figures. I said, which of these is your biggest enemy, and how do you plan to beat it? And let's almost create a competition to make sure that any of these enemies are not beating you this week on focusing on what you need to achieve, right? And we say, oh yeah, I do that. Oh, I do that. Okay, so let's beat it, and also let's ask others to help you, right?
And I love what you said. It's not coming up with a magic pill and this incredible strategy that nobody knew about. No, the people who actually succeeding long term, building something really meaningful, great international companies, they just do the boring stuff over and over again. They have a system, so you're not gonna find anything extremely new. Maybe you'll have 5-10% of new stuff, but what you'll see here is a structured methodology that will remind you what to focus on a consistent basis. And if you're not doing it, hopefully you'll get the inspiration to do it again. And the fifth villain is one that you're very, very good in this villain didn't get you at all. I think like you're really good in not being this and embracing this. And this is perfectionism. You've been really good in actually helping others to get rid of this villain, this enemy.
Yeah, it's like I always say, my motto of execute 10 things, and if three are wrong, you learn from them and you move quickly instead of trying to execute three things perfectly, right? And I think, especially in the New Europe, a lot of technical people, a lot of product people, there's always one more thing you need to do before launching. Is no, launch and learn, right? So it's this avoid perfectionism, doing things well enough that you can start learning, and then do them. And I think a lot of perfectionism, by the way, comes from the fear of making mistakes, or the fear that you're not allowing the company to make mistakes. So it goes back to culture. We need to create a culture in which making mistakes is allowed, so we can learn from them. And then probably say, well, I don't need to be perfect. I just need to do things, have a rationale, do them, learn from them, and do it again, right? And if we put that in the culture, I think it becomes you almost destroy perfectionism in the company per se, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there were many of the founders. We interviewed over 50 founders and thought leaders and included many examples. And many, like at least two of them, before I was finishing the chapter, said it's not a new thing. It's a mantra for many companies, but done is better than perfect. Right? It could be a good thing for many people who have these perfectionistic traits. And we move to the next module, which is optimal energy. Optimal energy. Why do we need to pay attention to optimal energy? We're building a business after all.
Yeah, I think this is another one you wrote, and something I think you're very passionate yourself about. But I think I taking this one as CEO, that my job is the optimal energy of the team. Of course, I have to manage mine, right? But I think COVID has forced us and make it very difficult at the same time to pay attention to our team energy, right? And our each individual energy. You use several allegories. I like the marathon one. So this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. So yeah, we can have a tomorrow we launch and tomorrow we launch, but this product needs to last 10 years, right? So you cannot be sprinting constantly, right? So you have to allow, which goes to your comparison about, you cannot be on high energy, which you call the survival mode, right? So this idea that when we talk about prioritization, we talk about, urgent and important, right? It's constantly in urgent, many times doing non-important things. You start burning out because you're in survival mode. So you need sometimes to go into performance mode, where you're doing very important, not urgent things, right? And I think this is very relevant. And I think many CEOs just keep the company in urgent mode, right? And probably have done it many times before. I say, hey, let's just give time people to think, to reflect, to do important things, not always time to be urgent, right? And I think as we get older in the company, I think we notice more, right? The other one, and let me try to do your trick, and it's not that easy. Oh, yeah, here. Is using the energy framework, right? Which I am terrible, but I think I'm still very energetic. So, but I don't follow your framework too well. But so I'm not a good example for most people, and some of them I am. But it's about exercise. Again, we've been tested during COVID, and I think everyone knows that when we have managed to find a way to do exercise at home, following videos, doing walks, how we feel better. If we spend 3 weeks in front of Zoom, we start feeling like crap, right? So what is the exercise that fits you? Nutrition, stop ordering food. Some people has used the pandemic as a way to go back to cooking themselves, feeling well about it, etc. But some people just start eating crap all the time, right? And we feel defeated in our body. Excitement, relationships, how important are, again, in COVID, these relationships around us to keep us strong, to keep us in the right place. Sleep, you call it good sleep. So, which again, everybody has different patterns, but you know when you're tired. You know when you're not sleeping enough. You need to listen to your body and sleep enough, right? Some of that needs 9 hours. Some people needs less hours. But you need to find your own sleep. And then something that, again, when we have been in houses with kids all around us, is you time, right? So how do you find that time for you in which you replenish your energy? Some people might be doing your own yoga, reading a book, listening to birds, whatever is you time. The time that is for me to re-energize myself. Again, if you are energetic, you energize the people around you. If you're not, you don't. And in this case, specifically as CEOs, when we saw 3 times in Zoom, like piece of people notice, right? We had this contagious capability, right? So energy, good energy contains, and our bad energy also. So I was talking to one of my partners today. I said, "Hey, I was coming in Q1, 3 or 4 calls, very pissed off, and I saw it to my team. I cannot do that. I realized, yeah, I said, oh, come on, and don't I have the right to do it? I said, no, we need to find other ways to get there because our team is fed by our energy. When we are positive, when we smile, when we meet on the morning, say, hey, good morning, everybody. How is everybody doing? Wow. People say, yeah, let's go, right? And you're like, yeah, good morning. Yeah, another Zoom call today, right? People, oh, right? So, and due time will make you happy, energetic, and will be transmitted to the people around you, family, relationships, company, etc. Right? So I think again, very simple framework, very normal things, right? But we so many times we don't pay attention to them. We just let them go. We let life flow. We need to control those things that impact our energy, and then we will actually feel much better and make the ones around us feel much better.
This is the one that's probably one of the most neglected ones. Like you see this semi energetic founders after 6 months or 2 years, just like barely moving, but keep on pushing. And I'm just gonna finish this model with the quote by Vlad Larin, the co-founder of Zero Code. He says, a founder's job is to take good care of the well-being of the team. In Zero Code, we made it a mission to make it cool to discuss topics related to energy and personal growth. That way, people started exchanging ideas, inspiring each other to grow. I personally adopted a lot of different habits and routines inspired by these open discussions with the team. So I think it's really important.
For
Yeah.
once, I'm going to get the last word on the quote. And let's get one more quote that I think is super important. What gets fun gets done. And that was Andrew Darwin, who's a human engineer. And it's like, don't underestimate, and even today more in this environment, the power of humor, the power of fun, right? So we have a behavior in our company which is work fun balance. And we've been super challenged this year on it. And it's still a challenge. But we're fighting it, right? We need the fun back in our lives. It looks like, Groundhog Day, every day the same thing, every day the same thing, right? So fun is fundamental. We need to find ways, even in this online mode that for many still we are on, to have fun. Fun is fundamental. We cannot a company doesn't have to be boring. Companies that are fun execute much better.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. And by the way, Roberto is tuning in and sharing. The energy framework is really important nowadays with the working from home situation. Working from home can make you forget about schedules, exercise, eating at proper time. Great framework to follow. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you for actually being somebody who doesn't talk but actually get things done. And but I want to continue with the next module as the time is ticking away. Robust communication, Cristobal. This is something you are very passionate about, and probably we should write 10 books only about this topic.
Yeah. No. And I think this topic were 2 topics, right? In fact, right? Because one was the communication per se, and the other one was the feedback, how to give and how to receive feedback. So I think we covered 2. We have actually 4 frameworks in this chapter. The one is about what are the 4 areas of robust communication. So the frequency of communication, the planning, the bilateral, so basically hand up down. So communication basically needs to flow in both directions, right? So that is basically extremely powerful, and we have to be coherent on what we're doing it. Then we talk about the 4 areas that there is not enough communication, that there can never be enough communication. Values, keep talking about values. Priorities, people, if you don't talk about priorities today, they think that yesterday priorities are not priorities anymore, right? So you keep talking about priorities every day. failures, we cannot just talk about, if you don't talk about failures, we don't learn from them. We think we're trying to hide from failures. So you need to keep talking about why we fail, what fails, what did we learn. Is the foundation of success is today's mistakes or failures. And the fourth one, at the same time that we keep talking about failures, is talking about success, right? Every small win, every small victory, an email to a CEO of an important client that just says, hey, let's have a meeting. Hey, we get an email. Yeah, let's have a coffee. Venga. So you don't need to celebrate only your MRR, your funding round year later. You celebrate everything, right? It's a roller coaster. There is so much shit coming your way. Please enjoy the small victories and all of them, right? And keep talking about it to your team, right? So we talk about these four, and then we have two frameworks: how to give feedback and how to receive feedback, right? And we talk a lot, and it's giving feedback. And remember, setting up a Zoom call to tell you why you suck Stoyan doing something, because remember, key thing in feedback is not that Stoyan sucks, but something he did in a particular context impacted me. I need to let you know so it doesn't happen again, or constructively find a solution together, right? So giving feedback and receiving feedback are fundamental. So we create a framework, very easy to follow, very clear rules that if you start putting them in practice, I think it becomes a very positive manner. And again, we need, and the thing that we actually have a fifth framework, which is the communication style of a leader, how to find balance in different areas of communication as a leader, how you need to be you. You cannot be a TED Talk or somebody you want to be and try to talk like him or her. You need to be you, but you need to find a balance because at the end of the day, also the CEO of the company. So we talk about the balance between formal and informal, the balance between oral and written communication, the balance between external communication and internal communication. So we talk about all those balances that you need to have there as a leader, and also the balance between one-to-one communication and team communication, right? And you need to craft your own balance personally, but you need to be aware of all these areas and how well you do it, right?
I love what you're emphasizing in this chapter and in the workshops that we do, which is about creating a safe space for people to be able to bring up mistakes, things that are going wrong. I fucked up this thing, like creating this safe space and consistently showing people that it's okay to make mistakes. That's fine. Do your best. Like, don't do the same mistake 7 times, but it's okay to do it. So creating this safe space, but then secondly, do not assume stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like often we as leaders, as founders, we are like, hey, we are all clear on this. Maybe you're clear in your head, but is everybody clear on that? We need to talk more frequent, especially in times like this. What is the right amount of frequency? Like, don't overdo it, but like, what is the right amount of frequency where everybody's clear? It's simple, it's easy. We're on the same page on these important things, as you said, priorities. We talk about the victories. We talk about, hey, this is what didn't work out. Let's next time we can do this and this and this. And we have an alignment. We give people, we praise people when they do something good, but not in a generic way. Hey, nice job. But really sit down with them and tell them, why did they do a nice job? What did you appreciate about the thing that they did? So communication is something, again, we can write 10 books about probably, and we wouldn't be able to cover it all. But let's go to the last one, which is number 7, a magic number, they say, which is mental toughness, the capability to deal with stress. And I think there was a nice definition we used by this psychologist, mental psychologist, which is, let me just find it. Mental toughness is sick. Mental toughness is the ability to consistently perform toward the upper range of your talent and skill, regardless of competitive circumstances. This is Jim Lohr, sports psychologist. So the thing, right, that we talk about is how do we understand stress and how do we decrease the amount of stress coming to the team? And on the other side, how do we increase our mental toughness, our capability to bear stress. So maybe you can share here a little bit about that.
Yeah, we do a lot of comparisons, and actually, you've done a number of podcasts even here with several professional athletes, right? So, sportsman, sportswoman. You did a couple of great interviews, a couple of fantastic sportswoman about how do they deal, right? Because when you're competing, you're many times, at that point of pressure, and how do you make sure that pressure doesn't become a stress, right? So I think to me that it's the acceptance of the level of pressure and the uncertainty that is coming to us. The second point you make on the chapter is also that a certain level of stress and a certain level of control is actually positive, right? The problem is when you have too much of it and when you don't know how to deal with it, right? And that goes about you define there is 7 stressors, right? That affect people differently. And you need to understand what are the ones that cause the most stress to you, the ones that cause the most stress to your team, and then put frameworks around them to make sure that that stress doesn't go to levels that you cannot control or doesn't get spread to everybody around it, right? But I think a lot of what you talk here is about how do you understand and you manage your mental state, right? How do we? And I think the pandemic has been very good, if we can say that, about putting mental health as a key topic on the table, into allowing people to openly talk about how they feeling, about this not being taboo in many companies, but also this not be something to hide that then it's too late and becomes a burnout, right? And one thing we talk a lot is that burnout might take 6 to 12 months to recover, and sometimes it's because you just don't. You say you cannot afford a 2 weeks vacation, and then suddenly you have to afford a 1 year off because you didn't deal with it, right? But again, we need to listen to our bodies. We need to be able to express how we're feeling, how we're sensing things. We need to understand the same in our team, and we need to be able to manage and cope with this one and have tools that allow us to control it. So I think the key thing is talking about it, understanding where it's coming from, and start defining tools, methodologies, or tricks. Tricks is a bit too easy, right? That allow us to basically control it to a certain degree, right? And I think that is very, very important, right? But again, certain level of stress during a certain period of time might be positive. You let it go for too long, or it goes to too high, and it becomes very negative. And that's it's a very interesting trick that we need to learn as leaders, as people also that we are.
Yeah, because I mean, having deadlines, setting milestones, this creates some pressure, it creates some stress. But as long as it's not going consistently above this excess level, because as we define it there and talk about the science behind it, it could have an detrimental effect on your health, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I don't know if you have a quote here. Otherwise, I have one prepared.
I let you. You're getting very good at reading these very deep quotes.
So we reached out as one of the 50 founders, entrepreneurs. We reached out to Jovanes Savoyan, who's the serial entrepreneur, 4 previous exits, and currently is the founder CEO of Pixart, a company with I think billion downloads right now. Um, what he said is, I try to recognize that stress is a given, and I just accept it as quietly and calmly as I can. Failure is part of the game, just much as success. And if you are not ready to fail sometimes, a startup probably isn't the place for you. And he also shared in the interview that at any startup he built, he had at least one nearly death experience of the startup. But he just developed this different perspective and mindset that, look, I'm building something from the ground. I'll have a lot of difficult moments, and I need to be able to accept them and embrace them as part of the journey.
Yeah, and I was thinking like Yesterday I was driving. Yesterday, if I was driving, right, I was thinking, wow, how many times in the last 5 years there was 100 euros in the bank account? Today we burn about 40 to 50,000 a month just on people, right? And how you're like, yeah, it's fine. How I remember with my conversations with one of my co-founders and with that, he says, don't worry, we find a solution. That's okay. We've done it before, right? When all people said, oh my God, 100 euros in the account, what about that? So the objective fact is the same. There's 100 euros on the account. It's just how we deal with it and how we accept it that is part of the journey that make us deal with it in a different manner. It's still worrying, but there's the movie with Tom Hanks about this Russian spy that gets caught in the U.S. and they bring him to Berlin, and the guy says, "But you might be executed. Are you not worried?" And he says, "Will that change anything?" He said, "No." Then why? Then it's okay, fine. No. So worry only if you are not doing what you can to change the situation. But if you cannot change the situation, don't worry because that will stress you, and then you have even less opportunity to change what you're doing.
And reminds me, I recently had this guy on the podcast, Brian Main, the creator of Go Mapping, having reached now more than 4 million people, and he had this thing: worrying is a negative goal setting. So it's like he said it right. Like the moment you feel into a low state, but you need to be aware, you need to have the tools. You get aware. Hey, I'm in a really bad place. I'm in a victim place. I'm feeling. What do I do to decrease the time in which I'm in this lower space? Do I call a friend? Do I go for a run? What is my tool not to stay down there and worry about the thing, but actually do something about it, or at least recharge my energy so I have a better chance to address this situation?
Yeah, there is in this coaching series in Netflix that they bring some key coaches. They interviewed Doc Rivers, at that time LA Clippers and now Philadelphia Sixers coach, and they one of the things is don't be a victim, right? It's a pressure is a privilege because we can't set today what we want to do in life, but don't be a victim. Just do something about it. And I tell my kids about, hey, whatever you do, we're lucky where we are. Don't be a victim. Right? This is the only thing I don't want you to do. Hey, we will suffer, we will cry, but don't be a victim. We're not allowed to be a victim. We cannot, right? So to me, it's a very powerful quote. This to the pressure is a privilege, and don't be a victim. A very powerful message that I have to put always there. It's a privilege that we can chase our dreams. And my parents were sent to work at a company 40 years. That's it. That was it, right? We can chase our dreams. We can make startups. We can change cities. We are privileged, right? So I always feel it's a privilege to be there in that position.
I knew you're gonna bring up a quote. I just knew it, but I think it's a really good point. Pressure is privilege, and when you understand, set in your mind the expectations, right? That hey, it's gonna be a bumpy road, maybe. That's fine. That's like you didn't sign up for the safe journey. You sign up for the bumpy road. That's okay. Just like Martin Zahoranec saying, it's sometimes. How was it like? Entrepreneurship is like a sadistic roller coaster. How did he say it?
Yeah, it's like a roller coaster. It's like a roller coaster, right?
Building a startup is a sadistic roller coaster. Sometimes you're having fun and sometimes you're down, but no matter how you feel, you gotta keep going. So, and the final thing, right? Our favorite little video we play on our live workshops with Joko Willink. Good.
Yeah.
Things are going bad. Good. We're gonna find a way, right? Yeah, Cristobal, I think we need to do more of this. I really enjoyed this one. It's been such a great time talking to you, and we found a time to actually have a video call, which is amazing.
But we said how long? We said almost like 3 weeks in advance. But maybe actually, for people listening, because we continuously put examples of our founders and startups, and I think one of the resonating feedback that we have gotten, and now with the academy also there, is that a lot of people who are project managers, who are executives, They said, I can apply 80% of this to my professional life. I can apply 80% of this to a new project that I started. I want to create a special culture in this project, right? So I think this is not just a book, and this is why a startup is between parentheses, right? It was always between parentheses, but it was just a hypothesis that we made, right? But I think the feedback is telling us there is a lot of things in the book you can apply regardless. So you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to basically put innovation in your company. You try to learn. So don't limit yourself if you're curious about it. Read a couple of chapters and you will see that it's very useful. And we have a lot of people who is telling us, and that is, I think, very comforting for us that so many people is giving us good feedback that they're really getting inspired by reading the book. And many different profiles, nationalities, ages, and experience levels is saying, wow, and even we have CEOs of unicorns, companies saying, buying this book and giving it to the new employees of the new startups, like this, my people needs to read this. This is simple enough, easy to follow, but actually it strikes the core, right? So I think it's being very satisfying for me and you as the writers and putting so much love and passion into writing this book to have such a strong feedback that it is impacting people and they're enjoying it also while reading it.
Exactly. Not just entrepreneurs, but I remember there was a CEO of a telecom that ordered 10 books for his employees. There's people ordering, bulk packages for their companies for acceleration programs, and it's just really you're not gonna find the magic pill here. You're gonna find a lot of strategies that work, and what I think is probably the most valuable, as Cristobal said at the beginning, is the examples are coming from the region. We call it New Europe, and it's more of a mindset, but many of the examples come from Eastern Europe, Central Europe. So here from the region, the guy next door, the girl next door, that actually consistently applied something really well. And here are the examples. A lot of the examples are included here. What did they do in order to actually build this company for these 5 or 10 years that they were part of this journey? What helped them to build this successful team, this successful company? And if you go to this page, performnow.eu/book, you can find a sample chapter. You can read more about it. And if that might be something for you, if that might be something for your team, by Friday evening, you can apply this code, capital letters, perform20. Use this code for 20% off, 20% discount of the book, and you'll receive a signed copy, personally signed by me or Cristobal, at your mail address, of your postal address. So hopefully you guys enjoy this session. Cristobal, any final notes, anything else you'd like to add to wrap up this inspiring and exaggerating, galvanizing conversation?
Let's keep performing in life. Let's keep having fun. Let's keep doing it together. As you said, it's always fascinating once you can slow down in your life, dedicate 1 hour to talk, smile, relax, and as you see, the hour became an hour and 15 minutes, and we could keep talking for 2-3 more hours, right? So take time. That's our you time. In this time, you is me and Stoyan. Glad to be here, and I think to share the screen with you and our thoughts. I hope we can keep impacting founders, project managers, executive, and people, with our book.
Yeah, and if you want to get in touch, we're very easy to find. DM me, DM Cristobal on LinkedIn, and let's keep performing.
And if you buy the book, you will find out Stoyan's second name, which he finally revealed in the book. So this is don't reveal it now. You need to buy the book, and you will find out his whole name. He's on one page before the last in a beautiful picture. There it is.
There you go. So, there you go. There's a secret hidden in between the pages.
Yeah, that's a secret right there.
Excellent. Once again, guys, performnow.eu/book and use the code perform20. It's been a privilege being here, sharing this conversation. Have a great day and keep performing.
Ciao.